Welcome back. I have another decisive result in the 2024 Chess.com Daily Chess Championship. Today my time is a little bit more limited than usual, so that I'm going to cut off the introduction there and go to the game. The game review was running in the background and it looked like I did really well in this one. I did have one mistake and 3 inaccuracies, but it says I played with 91.6% accuracy and the ratings estimator said I played like a 1600. My opponent outplayed their rating, so good for them as well, and played with 81% accuracy. I'm surprised it's that high since they did have 2 blunders, and I was ahead fairly early, although it looks like I didn't take full advantage of it. That's probably because I didn't realize I was ahead. I'm surprised there's a dip that early. I'm not sure exactly what moves those correspond to, but we'll find out here in a second, and I'll tell you the moment at which I was sure that I was ahead. My opponent opened with e4 and I played a Caro-Kann defense. They played d4, which is, I think, the strongest response to the Caro-Kann. At least I see it more at higher rating levels. Anyway, I played d5 and they got the knight out. This is not as common at my rating level. In fact, as I've dropped in rating levels, I rarely see that. I usually see the advanced variation or the taking, or instead of playing d4, they very often, put the knight over here instead of getting that knight out. But anyway, it says e6 is my best move here. I usually take in this situation, they take back with the knight and then I put my bishop out there. Now, usually what happens here is, I think it's the book move for the opponent to drop that knight back, directly threatening my bishop while also protecting the knight, and then I drop my bishop back here. But this opponent played f3, which it says is good and we're still even. But since my bishop isn't under threat, I don't have to move it immediately, and I can play e6, although it says knight to d7 is slightly stronger here, and it says I would play e6 on my next turn. I tend to go ahead and play e6 here because that allows the dark squared bishop out, it allows this knight out so I can castle, and one of my problems in the Caro-Kann usually is that I end up castling late because my opponent can mount an attack before I can. So I went ahead and played e6. Oh, the game review thought that was best? Okay, it says my opponent made their first blunder here. What they should have done was played bishop to f4 or knight to e2. I'm surprised about knight to e2 since it blocks in the light squared bishop. I would have expected more of a get the light squared bishop out first and then the knight. They can't put the knight on its normal square because they pushed that pawn earlier. But yeah, I'm surprised that's what the engine is recommending, or bishop to f4 here. But they played d5. Okay, now I did not know that I was up -1 or -2 at this point, well, almost -3 according to the game review. I thought that might have been an inaccuracy because I think I can just take that pawn here. I suspect one reason my opponent might have done it is because once I take that pawn, then they can put this bishop over here on b5 where they like to put it in the Caro-Kann defense, which is a check, and I have to block with the knight, that kind of thing. That might have been why they did it, or they might have, thought I would take this way and remove the defender of the bishop. The engine says I should just take the knight here. At first it said the pawn, but now it says I should take. You know what? I can see why that I did not respond to this as well as I could have, because just now I thought I should just take with this pawn. But what I actually did in the game was take with the queen. That looks like my 4th best move. It's not horrible, but it was counted as inaccurate, and I can see why. I'm not sure why I did that. I'm not the kind of person that normally gets my queen out early, but I do know, at least in my experience, that the lower rated the opponent, the less likely they are to want to trade queens. They tend to want to keep, most of them, not all of them, but most of them want to keep their queen around. So that must have been what I was thinking when I took with the queen, to see if they would trade queens. They didn't. They played their best move, which is to block our queens from seeing each other and defend the knight and point at my bishop. So that's not bad. And again, I didn't know I thought I was doing okay here, but I didn't know I was ahead almost -1. Like I said, I thought that pawn move was an inaccuracy. I did not play any of my top 5 moves here. Knight to f6 would have been fine. I thought if I played knight to f6, they would just take it. And then I would have to take back with the pawn. And then my pawn structure would be messed up. Really? It says they wouldn't. It says if I played knight to f6, they would drop this knight back to c3. I don't know that they would. Yeah, I would be scared of that move. Or knight to d7. It says just leave all those pieces sitting there and get another piece out. Or queen to a5 check. See, it says that they would block with the, it says that they would block with the queen if I checked over here on a5, but they just refused a queen trade, so I don't know that they would. I think they would block with the bishop or the pawn. But anyway, or knight to a6, and it says that they wouldn't take. But again, why wouldn't they take? Oh, they wouldn't take because they don't want to trade queens right now? Okay, I guess I get that. I just took the knight. My strategy a lot of times in the Caro-Kann defense, once this bishop is out, because that's the whole point of the Caro-Kann, at least for me, is to not get it trapped back in there like you do in some other defenses, like the French, for example. But once it's out there, I'm usually happy to trade it for either one of those 2 pieces, the light squared bishop or one of the knights. But that was a mistake. I guess my only mistake of the game, and now we're very close to even. I did expect them to take back with the pawn, but I thought I would just move my queen at that point, and it says I should have moved it to a5, and this time they would block with the bishop. Then I would have to drop it back to b6, aiming, I guess, at that pawn, also aiming down through there, so maybe hindering their castling. It also says I could go to c5 or d6 or d8. e5, I played my 5th best move, but it's not that much worse. I just went there because they don't have any f or d pawns anymore, so they're not going to be able to hit it with the pawn. It's going to be a while, I think, before they'll be in a position to, challenge it with the bishop. They can't move that pawn right now, for example. So I thought it was fine here, and then I can start developing. Well, I can't do that, but I thought I could start developing, something. My opponent played their best move here, which was c3. Knight to f6 was my best move earlier, but it's not listed now, so that was my second inaccuracy of the game, and now we are so close to even that it might as well be even. My opponent played one of their best moves here, threatening my queen. I had to drop it back. I think I had been planning on dropping it back to c7 the whole time. From there, it can route around to, point it where the king wants to castle. It can defend the bishop's development. So that's what I did. It's going to be safe back here for a little while. Now, I do understand why my opponent played their next move. They played g3, which is not a good move here. But because of where I put my queen, I think their idea was to get another bishop out and point at my queen. The problem with that thinking, of course, is that that's a 2-move thing, and my next move was probably going to be this anyway, and so then their bishop wouldn't be able to point at my queen. But they played that. We're still between +1 and -1. Bishop to d6 is one of my top 2 moves. I saw that that's probably why they would play that, is to develop the bishop to f4, so I developed as I had planned when I put my queen back here. Now if they put their bishop there, I'll get the bishop. When they take, they take back with the pawn, I'll get the pawn too. But they took back with the bishop. Again, I did not know that that was the blunder. I still don't know that I'm ahead here. I just knew that I'm picking up a pawn. I am 1 pawn ahead because they put that pawn there earlier and let me have it, but now I get this pawn, I'm 2 pawns ahead. But I don't know it's -1.5. I think maybe it's -0.5 or -0.6, something like that. I know 2 pawns are supposed to add up to 2 points, but they don't always. I guess I should have added a little bit to my personal evaluation because of those 2 pawns are these 2 pawns. So there's no place to castle to now. Except the engine says that they should castle now. I guess I can see that because it puts the rook here, aimed at my queen, and their king would be there defending that pawn, their knight's defending that pawn, their queen's defending their bishop. Nothing would be defending this bishop at that point, but I can't get to it just yet. But yeah, the engine says they should castle here. They played what I thought was an okay move. I think they wanted to move their queen, so they wanted a defense for this knight. Now it's -2.2, -2.3. Oh, they left the defense of that pawn. My best move is to take it with the knight. I do remember considering that here because I was already 2 pawns ahead, and this would put me, 3 pawns ahead. I guess the reason that I didn't is because that would leave me with 2 undefended pieces out front, and I wasn't sure what their immediate plans were. Well, the knight would be defended while the queen is there, but, I didn't know if they could chase off the queen, and then the knight would be left hanging. Yeah, I played very conservatively here, so I didn't play any of those moves. The whole reason I had got that bishop out in the first place was to castle, so I castled with, that's inaccurate. I still don't know that I'm ahead, but my king is safe now. Now, instead of castling, they played their 3rd best move. Castling's not listed anymore, by the way, but they did the same effect that I thought castling would have had earlier, which is to line the rook up with my queen. Now, again, it says I should take their e-pawn with my knight. Okay, taking with the queen wasn't bad. That's what I did, and the reason I did it is because that pins the bishop. Yes, they can attack my queen, but they definitely can't move the bishop right now. I also thought that might, limit places that their queen can develop, and I thought if they did move the knight, I could come over here and check, something like that. Well, here, my opponent just put their queen right there, offering me a queen trade. Okay, good. It was my best move to take. I thought that it was because now I'm up 3 pawns because I've just taken that one. And I thought, if I trade here, we're going to have the same number of pieces and I'm going to have 3 extra pawns, and their king is basically stuck in the middle of the board. They can still castle, but they don't have a lot of pawns over there either, and one of them's already moved. So I did trade. It said it was my best move. Okay, knight b to d7 is my best move here. Now again, I'm pretty sure I'm slightly ahead here, but I did not realize that I was winning until this move. They just hung their bishop. Now, one of the things I had said in a previous video, things I need to do to improve to stop losing in rated rapid games, it applies here. They gave me a free piece. I was pretty sure I should take it, and of course I should, but it says I don't have to. I'm still up almost -4 if I just play c5 and threaten their knight. And the engine expects that their knight would give itself up right here if I did that. Oh, because if I took back, they'd get an extra pawn out of the deal? Interesting. But yeah, it was just a free piece, and this is the moment at which I realized that I went ahead here. My opponent played their best move, which is to attack the knight, and it wasn't necessarily my best move to go where I did. It was among them, still -5 to threaten the rook. And I thought, I can come back here. I can come back here. I have all kinds of places to go. Also, depending on where they go, I might be able to fork. But their knight is guarding my forking square. So when they put the rook there, I attacked their knight. And I thought, you know what? If they take mine, I'll take theirs. And I'll still be up, 6 points of material. But they didn't. And that's the reason I had moved that pawn, is because I thought they would save one of their pieces and then I can fork. So that's what I did. So I picked up their rook for the knight. They haven't got the knight yet, but I can't get it out, right? So I'm not really up +11. I'm up +8 is what I'm counting it. I'm counting that knight as gone. I still can't get out either of those ways. So I lined up a rook with the king, chased off their rook. This was a check on their king. Also ready to move this knight in if I can. Their king went back, so I lined up another rook behind my passed pawn. I actually have 2 passed pawns here. And they went back to, I guess, line up an extra piece at that. Or, you know what? Maybe they were worried that if they went toward it, I would check them on the back rank. I was considering it. I was thinking about trading off for their knight. I would be willing to give up a pawn for that, but instead they just put it there. So I took it, right? If I had gone here and they had taken, then I would have had an out-of-place pawn. It still would have been passed, though. But anyway, they just put it there where I could take it. So they had to take back. Now look at my pawns. They can just go. I have 2 passed pawns. I have rooks behind one of them, and they're going to protect each other. I wasn't worried about that much. I didn't want it to take me, and I can't take them because of where their rook is. So I just moved my king up. I thought if they checked me, I could come up here, and their pawn's dead in the water. Instead, they went after the knight. I protected the knight. There's nothing they can do about that now. I came around behind this pawn. They brought the rook in to protect it. I came after the rook went back, and I took the pawn. Now I'm up 12 points of material, except they can take the knight, which they didn't. It's their best move to take the knight now, but that's their second best move. Anyway, so now I've got 2 pawns that can, keep marching, and that one gets all the way there. They block it with their rook. I bring up the other pawn behind it, and there's not much they can do here. I don't know what their actual best move is. Oh, it says their best move is to take here. Is that what they did? Oh, they did take there. Okay, well, I took their rook with check. They got out of check. I went here not only to get out of the way of this pawn, but I thought I might be able to checkmate without having to worry about their front C pawn. But then I decided to take it so they don't have any threats. Neither of these pawns can go anywhere. Sorry, we went into a variation. It says game may have continued. I wish it wouldn't do that because that's what I thought was going to happen. Here I had set up some conditional pre-moves just in case they moved the king here, or moved one of those pawns forward. Those are their only 4 legal moves right now. And my next move was going to be to bring this rook over. But that's where my opponent resigned after I took this pawn. So I think maybe they'd been kind of holding out hope. The reason they hadn't resigned before this is because they thought maybe I won't notice the pawn or something like that. But I did notice it, and I noticed that I was guarding the promotion square. But again, I did at some point want to move my rook to b8, and I didn't want there to be a pawn there attacking b8. So anyway, I took the pawn. They resigned. This is my group's page on the tournament. I am still leading with 18 wins. The opponent that I just beat there in that game has 15 wins. And they're tied for second place with 2 other competitors, the other 2 people that I'm still playing. Apparently, those 3 people are all still playing this person who timed out against me, but is still playing against those other people. Now, the number 2 person and number 3 person here, like I said, they're all tied for second place, but they're listed as number 2 and number 3. Yeah, I think the number 3 one has beaten the number 2 one, and their other game is still ongoing. Interestingly, they're both from Bangladesh, and there's another person from Bangladesh that was in this tournament, so maybe that country is experiencing a growth in chess as well. The other person was from Germany. I did notice that those people seem to be, the 2 Bangladesh people obviously were in the same time zone, so they'll see each other's moves more often during the day than they'll see mine. So I'm actually kind of surprised that I got a game finished. They're almost on the 12 hours opposite from me. So when I'm in the middle of the day, they're in the middle of the night, and so on. Assuming that the flags are accurate. And this other person is in Germany, which I think is 6 hours ahead of me. So in my evening, they've already gone to bed probably, and I don't wake up until they've had lunch. So time zones do affect daily games like that sometimes. But anyway, with 4 games left, I'm pretty confident that I can pull out a win in this group, but I've got my fingers crossed. I'm not going to get overconfident. I'm going to play as carefully as possible. As always, thank you for being here. Thank you for spending your time on my channel, and especially for those of you that leave comments trying to help. Even if I don't get it at the moment, it does go into my brain, into my unconscious, and hopefully it rolls around in there and eventually will emerge as amazing chess knowledge. I'll see you next time.